God is so good. You know, I could have actually gone even away from here, which I wouldn't mind, you know, but it wasn't a serious enough stroke that it would have kept me. I just lost few days in the first week when it happened that I can't quite remember much, you know, and I couldn't talk. That was the one thing that I couldn't talk, and now here I'm to talk. So anyway, let me get my classes. I thank God, Dennis. He kept me going and get me here. And I have been asked to talk about my life before I became a Mormon, and then the time after I left Mormonism, which is the precious time, even though it has been very, very difficult in many ways, emotionally as well as just to settle everything in my heart. Let me tell you first how I became a Mormon. I was a young lady and without family. I didn't have, my mother died when I was 11, and my father died when I had just turned 17. And he married after my mother died fairly soon, and he said to me that he did it because he didn't want me to be raised by hired maids. That my mother had an illness that she couldn't do much of the things at home. She got ill right after I was born, or right at that time when I was born. Even the doctors didn't know what caused it, but she couldn't. It affected her muscles and bones and all that, you know. And she was only 19 when I was born. So it was something that nobody expected, or nobody knew what happened. But anyway, that's one. And so I was an only child, and my grandmother's, my father's side grandmother died just weeks after my mother had died. She was obviously shocked that the 19-year-old new wife of her son just got ill like that, and so we always had to have a maid to take care of me and also her. But it was a wartime in Finland, and so everything was unsettled. So, but anyway, I was just a little over 20 years old when I met this young lady, Anu. Lappalainen was her name. She had just a year before we met, joined the Mormon Church. So we were not like everyday meeting, but quite often I knew her well, and so she invited me to come with her to the Mormon branch meeting. It was in an apartment building that they had rented. The Mormon Church had rented space there. There was this like, Dennis knows that too, because he was a missionary then. He wasn't the missionary who converted me, but he was meeting in that same place, and so I met him already then before. Well, no, actually, I didn't meet him. He met in that same building, but later, so there, my mind is kind of giving a little pause. Anyway, because this friend, a new friend of mine who was a new Mormon, she knew that I had no family. I had no parents or no grandparents. Both of my grandparents had died soon after. First, my mother died, and soon after, my father died. So, it was kind of a confusing thing. Well, when the it's one thing that comes to the Mormon mind when they hear that if somebody doesn't have family, and everybody that were close to her had died. So then the first thing that Mormon missionaries and Mormons' general focus is the work for the dead. And that was a reason, a basic reason. Of course, I didn't know at that point, but that was the reason that motivated me to agree to check into what Mormonism really teaches besides the work for the dead. And so I was easy convert. 3 weeks after I had met the missionaries, I was baptized into the Mormon church. There was nobody, no family members, nobody, and actually Mormonism was then, that was in the 60s, Mormonism was a new religion that nobody really knew. I lived in Oulu, which is north, quite a bit north from Helsinki, that is the capital, and where the mission office was. Now I lost it. So I really, the missionaries, they said to me that they taught me all that I needed to know to become a Mormon. But I didn't know, and they didn't ever said, I never learned who God of Mormonism was. I assumed that it was God of the Bible because they used, when they could teach people who are not the LDS, they used the Bible, just totally the Bible. But then they found out, they wanted to, when they started to come to my apartment, they yeah, I said they were quoting from the Bible, and they wanted me to take out the Bible, and I said, I don't have one. I didn't actually own a Bible. I was a typical member of the Lutheran Church in Finland. A Lutheran church is, members of the Finland, the Finnish people. 93% of the Finns automatically belong to the Lutheran Church. So I would, and actually there we don't even get birth certificates when people are born. They are just registered. All the births are registered by the Lutheran Church, and that's like if you want to have your ID, it is just a certificate from the Lutheran Church that you are a member of the Lutheran Church. and 93% of the people are Lutheran, but that doesn't mean that they know anything about the Bible. Unfortunately, Lutheran Church at my time and even now is pretty much dead church. There's not well, when I found out that these two young men that were missionaries for the Mormon Church were there to convert their contacts to the membership of the Mormon Church. So therefore I went to, like very soon, like within a few days after I had met these missionaries, I went to Oulu is a university town. It's a fairly large city, and there's the church in Oulu, the main church in Oulu, is probably nearly 200 years old. Finland, Helsinki became a capital of Finland in early 1600s. So, although of course the churches were the first big buildings that they built and everything. But anyway, I went to that church to talk to their main pastor, just asking him about what he knew about Mormonism and Mormon church. And he didn't really know much, except that he said that, they practice polygamy. And that was the one thing that he knew. And he, and I just said how I really am impressed with their representatives. They are really nice and friendly and seem to be knowing what they are preaching. And, this pastor thought that it was pretty crazy for me to even be interested, but then he, I guess, tried to make a joke. He says, "Are you planning on joining a Mormon harem?" Or, and I said, "No." No, but I got offended by his, smirky attitude. And so I became to leave, and he says, "Well, if you join, we welcome you back, because you're going to see that it's not Christian religion at all." But he didn't know that much except the polygamy. So anyway, I was offended, and I told him, I said, even if I find it not being true and correct, I wouldn't come back here. And so anyways, that was my, but that was kind of pushing me to take even more seriously what those missionaries were saying. And so they told me soon that if I joined the Mormon Church, I would have a right as a member of the church to go to their temple and do the work for the dead, so that I would become a savior for my parents and grandparents and all members that will receive the Mormon high temple endowments. And that was kind of also a push for me that, well, then if I can help my parents and grandparents and all these to become members of the Mormon Church and be saved after they have died. So, I was just really impressed of what they had told me about the work for the dead, and So, but then, I agreed that they said, well, but you need to be a baptized member before you can do any of this. And so I said, okay, why not? There's nobody that would object me on that. So anyway, I was baptized, and they assured me that in order to be blessed in a Mormon church, you have to obey all the rules and regulations and be active, that you attend all the meetings that they have, Sundays or weekdays or whenever they have. You have to attend all of them and follow the rules of the church. Well, I thought that's not a bad deal if I can get my parents and family saved and see them again. I had not expected to ever see my parents. I didn't know, well, I knew they were Lutheran because everybody was Lutheran, but I didn't know how seriously they took their faith and religion. So, I was just happy to be able to represent them in a Mormon temple. It was a while ago, before I found out that I couldn't go to the temple. I would have to be a member at least a year. And so my question was, why? Why do I have to wait for a year to go to the temple and start doing what I'm really now becoming a Mormon for, so that I can help my relatives, my family, parents? And so anyway, they just said that you have to prove yourself that you have really converted into this faith and are willing to live according to this faith. So, but I thought, first of all, they said that, of course, all your sins are forgiven were forgiven when you were baptized. I said, well, then I'm sinless now to go to the temple. Why can't I? And well, anyway, they tried to explain it, and I accepted because I didn't know how the Mormons reasoned a lot of these things. So anyway, that's was before I really started to understand what Mormonism was, and I read everything. I went to the mission office in Helsinki, and I bought every book that there was about Mormonism written by Mormon Church or Mormon people, and so I really tried to educate myself on Mormonism as soon as I could. There were only very few real books that were written by the church, and the missionaries that baptized me. They gave me as a gift a book. It was written by LeCrown Richards, and the name of the book was Marvelous Work and a Wonder. And so that was what the missionaries had told me all along, how marvelous the work is in the Mormon church and how wonderful the Mormon church is and the people are. And so I was excited to immediately start reading that book. And that was, I had only read, I don't remember exactly how many pages, but only a few pages, when there came like a shock to me that this can't be true, So, and this is what I, when Eric asked me what would be the topic of your message be, and that was a couple months before anything happened to me. So I was really happy to talk to you all, but something that was written in that book that it just stopped me and shook me, and that was, later I understood that was the spiritual warning. You're entering into something that is not from me. That was, I understood that the Spirit of God, which of course I didn't have a Spirit of God because I wasn't born again, but I actually, whatever about the faith and religion I knew was from the messages from the Lutheran Church, which I didn't go very often, but it was always in a national Finnish radio. All the sermons that Lutheran Church presented, they were in the radio, and I had heard a lot of things, but I didn't really have any personal relationship with the church, except that I was baptized as a baby, sprinkled, in other words, with water, and so that first warning, it just stopped me when I was reading that book. And I don't even know exactly what it was, but it was something that the Spirit of God, that of course is watching everyone, even though whether they're born again or not. And that's where I got the first warning. There was something wrong in this. And but then I was thinking, well, but I have already joined this church. I have become a member, and I have made promises that I will obey and follow the rules and regulations. And then it's just kind of, I like converted myself again. That this, I don't have the knowledge to say this is not true, this is not right. So I have to continue reading and studying and believing. I had been a member not quite 9 months when the mission president, who he actually was Canadian, his name was Malcolm Asplund, and he had been a university professor in Canada, but he was a Mormon and had served the mission as a young man in Finland. He was a what would you say at the age? He was about close to 40, and had 4 children, little children, and they lived in that mission home that was right close to the Jyväsjärvi, which is the big lake there in a park. Anyway, he came to see me. I didn't even have a telephone, but he came to see me, and he said that he has heard about me, that I know everything that there is to know about Mormonism, and you are really a good example to others. So he said that he came to call me to be a missionary in Finland for the Mormon Church. He said, I have heard, I guess the missionaries, there were at that time in Finland about 2,500 Mormons in the whole Finland, entire Finland, and most of them were in bigger cities, and all where I lived, there were probably, I would say, maybe 20, 25 members already. The Finnish mission was opened 1948, and most of the missionaries then had been missionaries in Sweden. Finland is actually a two-language country. If you want to work anywhere that you're dealing with the public, you need to know both languages, and everything from street names to other information is always shown in 2 languages. Even though Finnish is the main language, Swedish, even though Finland was part of Sweden from early 1700 till 1809 is when Russia conquered the Finland, which was then called Swedish-Finnish country. So it was anyway, this mission president said that I would be able to then do the temple work for the dead, but not yet, because you had to be a member at least 1 year before you could get a temple recommend. But he said that I'm going to call you on a mission because you obviously know more about Mormonism than any other members that he has met or talked to. And so he said, you could become a good missionary, but you can't do the temple work until you have been a member at least a year. And he said, well, the one thing that I have planned, if you accept this call on a mission, and do the genealogical work for 4 generations, and put them in a Mormon church assigned papers, the genealogy papers, and you can get it done before fall. We can send all those papers to Swiss Temple and have them baptize them, and then in January, he was talking to me in June, next January, I will take all the 120 missionaries that are here in Finland. I would take them to charter a plane, and we go to Switzerland for a week to do the temple work for your relatives. Wow. That they put them, have the temple, Swiss temple gets enough people that do all the baptisms prior to us arriving in it was a town was named Zolligofen, where near city Bern in Switzerland, where we would go. And this was quite something, I mean, now I hadn't been a member a year yet, and I was called to be a mission, but that had a promise that they will do all baptisms will be done first for all my dead relatives, but then we will do as a missionaries attending a temple, and first I had to do my own endowments, then I can do the work for the dead females in my family. Let me tell you, there were so many spiritual alarms going on in me, but I was so excited that I could actually get my family join the Mormon Church in the spirit world, and then I would be guaranteed that I have my family in heaven forever. That was that all those alarms that went on in my heart when I saw something that wasn't really, what I could in my human mind understand. So I just kept on going. But then when we got to the temple, Dennis was on a mission at the time, so I knew him there, and he was one that did several endowments during that week for my close relatives, like the other 120. And they had some for the females, and males for the males. And but that is where I had been told by the mission president how beautiful, how wonderful the temple experience will be. But he kept on telling me all kinds of things to assuring that I should not be alarmed. If you see something that you don't quite understand, just remember that your whole life you keep going to the temple, you will get more and more understanding. So don't criticize, don't be alarmed about what you think is not right. He kept on saying that to me, even during a flight to Switzerland from Finland. He talked to me, told me, but he said, I can't say what is actually happening in a temple, but I assure you that it is all from God. And so anyway, then finally it came, of course I was baptized, so I didn't have to worry about that part of the temple ordinances. But then after I had gone through my own endowments, and that was shocking enough, because I understand that now there are no death penalties, but it was full of death penalties for everything and anything that you might say about what goes on in a temple, that there's a death penalty for that. And then we had to show physically by hand how they can kill. The first penalty was putting your thumb under your ear and drawing your thumb across, showing how your life can be taken if you reveal anything that goes on in a temple. That was for the first token of the Aaronic priesthood. There were, for the priesthoods had, Aaronic and Melchizedek priesthood had both, two signs and tokens for those. Has any of you been through the temple? You have? Mm-hmm. You have? But you probably have been through the temple after 1990, right? No? 1980. You have experienced.
I did, and I was in tears at the end of it.
Well, I was in tears, and after I had gone through all these things for myself and received my endowments, we had the mission president. We had a dinner break or a lunch break after that, because it had taken about 2.5 to 3 hours, whatever it was, and the mission president was speaking to all of us, 120 missionaries, and there were 3 Finnish couples that joined us in that flight to Switzerland to get their marriage sealed in a temple. So they were also attending to all meetings, and I remember mission president saying that our new Mormon sister, who's a missionary now, he didn't mention me by name, but this missionary was so moved by the beauty of the temple that she had tears in her eyes, and I felt like I'm a hypocrite if I don't stand up and say I didn't cry because I was moved for the beauty of it. I was scared. I was scared to death. And just like you said, and if. But anyway, I was not allowed to speak any further about that. So, but anyway, this was my first experience of going through that, after that lunch break or dinner or whatever it was meal that we had, we continued to do the work for the dead. And the first name that I had was my mother. My mother's name was pinned on my dress here, but this time we all had to go through the initiatory ordinances, which are not normally people who go to the temple to do the work for the dead. The baptisms and initiatory ordinances have been previously done by the group of people that, each takes a name and does that. That initially the ordinance was that shook me to pieces, because there, of course you have to take all your clothes off, and then they put you on a shield. They call it a shield. It's just you take the bed sheet and cut a hole in the middle for the head, but it's open on both sides. So it's actually open, except, you can put your head through and then it hangs around. Well, anyway, I just wanted to tell you how awful it was for me from the beginning. First of all, I was now, the initiatory ordinance is washing and anointing your physical being for to be worthy to attend to get the endowments. And so there first of all, the first part of the initiatory ordinances is you're anointed, washed, and anointed. What the temple worker does, it touches her hand. It's a woman that does, so the women, the men. That temple worker touches her hand in the water and touches, each part of the body, starting from the head, going clear through the body, including your genital, areas. Everybody it's not really done anything except touching first with water, every part, and promises you to be clean. And then the next part of that initiatory ordinance is the oil. Anointing with the oil. So the temple worker, female temple worker, touches, gets the hand oil and does the same thing through your whole body. It is very uncomfortable when the strange person touches all parts of your body, including your genitals. It is offensive. No matter how brave you try to be, it is very offensive. And after that, the temple worker is the one that puts on your garment. Of course, those days it was just a one-piece garment. You just step into it, and temple worker pulls it up, puts it on you, and then the words that they're saying, like in putting on a garment, they say, "This you must wear all the days of your life, day and night." It's a 24/7 clothing that goes next to your skin, and you have to have it on, and for the rest of your life. Well, now I have my mother's name. My mother is dead. These washing and anointing are for the health and well-being for the person. Immediately you think, well, my mother's dead. He's not going to get better and come back alive. No, then when they put the garment on, they say that you have to wear this the rest of your life. Well, this was being done for the dead, and so how do you do that for the dead? You can't with the garment on them. They died and buried, and so this whole thing was every part of these necessary ordinances only fits the living. It doesn't do anything. None of the words match what you're saying to a dead person, and for the dead person. So that was the one that really hit me hard. That this is pretending something, and I even from that first day I understood in my own self that this is only to remind the living person of what the same thing that you took on yourself as a ointment of water and oil and a garment. It fits you, but it doesn't fit anybody who's dead. It doesn't have any meaning to a dead, and dead won't be there to listen to that. So anyways, that was the thing that was really difficult for me to get over. If I had been, I think that if I had been in my own country rather than in Switzerland, if I had been with other people that were not Mormons, I probably would have walked out. That strong was my feeling then there about this, that this cannot be true. It's just done so that those who have joined the Mormon Church are living, they had done that for them to remind them. I think I have talked way too much. Time is over. But there are so many things through my. I was about 20 years an active Mormon. During the first year after. Well, I had thought about. I'll give you that quickly. That I had thought about right from the time that I joined the Mormon Church, that since I don't have relatives or family, anybody in Finland, I would rather go to America and be among Mormons, because they have told me that all the Mormons are now my brothers and sisters, and I didn't have brothers or sisters. So I had put, I checked into that from American Embassy, and they said you had to put your application. If you are approved, then we will let you know. But they say it could take months or even years before you get the answer. I was still on a mission, but I still had a few months left. I was still on a mission when American Embassy sent me a letter saying that I had been approved. I will have the green permanent resident card waiting for me there at the American Embassy, and so I could go. But you only have 3 months to decide. But then in 3 months you have to either refuse that or accept that, but then in 3 months you would have to go to America. And of course I didn't know anybody here, except for some missionaries that I had met, and so I went to talk to the mission president, and he thought that was wonderful, and he said that they will do anything and everything. You can just serve in a mission to 3 more months, and then you can arrange how you're going to get to America and what are you going to do. So anyway, I decided that I didn't have anybody there in Finland that would absolutely want me to keep me there, because the relatives I had were not close. So anyway, that was the reason why I came to America, and I went to visit the church office building, which was that old building on at the end of the State Street, and you know there was one of the high leaders that took me through the whole place and explained everything, and then he said that the church had just then, that was in September 1964, the church had organized or began the new department, which is called the Translation Department of the church. And Thomas Fyans, who later became one of the general authorities, was chosen as the head of that. And then they sent me to meet with him, and you know there's a lot of things done there. But I was the first official translator for the church when the translation department was organized. They had translators for Spanish language, several, and have had for years, because the Spanish-speaking Mormons are the largest group after English-speaking. And so, but I was the first one officially put into the translation department, and so from there on, I worked for the church for almost 15 years, and so I learned all kinds of things that most Mormons don't learn because they don't have to put it in another language. But anyway, there one of the assignments that I had, it was 5 years after I had myself gone through the temple for the endowments, that I received an assignment to translate everything that goes on in the temple, even the baptism, even though it's the same wording as is for the living converts or the 8-year-olds or whatever. The baptism is the same for the dead as it is for the living, but from that on, from the initiatory ordinances to the endowments, to the marriages, to all the sealings, everything that is done in the temple has its own ceremonies and own wording. I had to translate out, but I had to do it in the temple. I was not allowed to take any piece of the papers that had always been separate before, but now they had made it into a sort of like a booklet. But only those who were taking part of that part of the temple ceremony had, so that not every temple worker that was there doing these different parts, they didn't get they get only their part, and there's very few live actors in that part that they do. Only there's Adam and Eve, there's Satan, Lucifer actually, and then there's 3 apostles, our day apostles, Peter, James, and John, which would be a couple thousand years before they were even alive. But they were apostles there, and in the temple ceremony, and so anyway, all those that were live actors, they each got their own part only. Nothing else was given to them. So even the temple workers couldn't put the whole thing together as how it works. But so anyway, that was the time, and we had to describe how they can kill us if we tell anything about any. They even emphasized to me and to everybody that was working there that there's they call it the temple language. The words that are used in a temple, you cannot use those words, even those words, in another context. That's how strict they had to be, how they had to be outside of the temple. You can't talk about anything that goes on in a temple, or your life will be taken. So anyway, there's so much to say, and I'm sorry I'm so slow now. I could have done this probably in 15 minutes if I was set, and I'm so slow, so I have to skip the rest, but there are, during my about 20 years as a Mormon, I took it, even though I had such a serious doubts and questions, but I had committed myself, I have given myself to follow everything that I'm told, because the first years I thought, there's no way I can know everything to be able to say, this is not true, this is not true. I was thinking in my own self that I have to follow it just in case, if it is true. And so therefore I ended up being, Dennis and I, we had been good friends during the mission, but we were not dating. The Mormons are totally forbidden to do any of that. But we, obviously God was directing us, because Mormon missionaries, where they are, moved from place to place. Usually, after they are usually about 3 months in one city, then they are moved one by one, not as a pair, but one by one to another city, and that is to get no Mormons in every city. But I had never during my mission, I was in the same city with the same missionary. But with Dennis, we were in 5 cities where I was moved or he was moved. We were in the same city in 5 cities during our mission, and so we automatically were good friends, because we knew each other from another city, and then again from another city. And later we realized that, when Dennis finished his mission and I had to come here, the very soon after he had gone to his Idaho stake, where he was called from, he had to go there to the stake to report to his Idaho state what he had done in the mission, and then after he wasn't really released from his mission until the stake president, where he was sent, said so. Now you are released. Now you're free, soon, right the day or two after that, after he had been released, he came from Idaho to see me here in Salt Lake, and he proposed to me. We had not dated at all. He said, "Well, I know who you are. I know everything about you, and I love you. And now I've decided that you would be my wife." We knew each other in 5 different cities in Finland, and so that's enough dating. So. So anyway, so we got married, and that's in December this year. It's 59 years. So the next year it's going to be our 60th wedding anniversary, and it's been a happy marriage. We did not have any children, you know, and people said, didn't you know how, you know, what to do? Because, you know, I never was pregnant. And we went to a couple of doctors, but then we, you know, we adopted those 3 girls that we have raised. They were also born in Finland, and there was a friend of ours that arranged 2 of them, you know. Well, so all 3 of them are Finnish girls, but they are now in the 50s and 60s. So we don't have children at home. And so anyway, I just thank you for being patiently listening. I would have so much more to say, but I just can't. But Eric had said earlier, because after this I had that stroke and I have a problem. It's so much better. For the first couple of weeks, I didn't say hardly anything. I couldn't even think. But now, Eric said when Dennis first called and said that we may have to cancel the Rauni's May appointment because of this, and Eric has said, well, if she can't, maybe we can get her come in the fall when she's totally healed. And I'm just saying, I'm not putting myself there, but I said, if any of you want to talk to me and ask questions.
I'd be interested in you're working for the church.
I don't think so.
As a translator. What was it, and maybe a few things, that convinced you that maybe Mormonism wasn't the end-all, be-all religion?
Well, I was not ready for actually several years to actually say that, because I figured that I didn't know enough about details that only general authorities would know. But by that time, by my almost 15 years there and seeing, I had access to secret materials, many of those that nobody else, except some translators that were assigned for that type of information. So a lot of people didn't know that, but I did, and that's why I had several cases where I had to take special oaths that I will not speak of that. And you know, I still was, I joined just barely knowing what the Mormonism is. I didn't know who God of Mormonism was. I thought that the Jesus of Mormonism was the same as the Lutheran Church believed. It was not then explained to any converts, and as I was a missionary, I didn't explain to anybody. I didn't know that we had you know, you have to really somehow figure it out on your own, unless you have an opportunity to attend the classes or teachings about pre-existence. Pre-existence is where it comes that God was once, and of course the Mormonism, the first 12 years, or no, actually even 14 years of Mormonism, the Mormons that had joined, they had joined the Christian church. The Mormon church was first called the Church of Christ. It was named Church of Christ until 1835. And then 1835, they changed the name to Church of Latter-day Saints. Christ was taken off altogether. And then 3 years after that, in 1838, they put the same, combined those two names, Church of Christ and the Church of Latter-day Saints named it the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Even that tells you that the Christ of the Mormon Church is another Jesus. It's a Jesus of Latter-day Saints. It takes a long time, to figure that out. Even as a Mormon, you meet a lot of Mormons now, especially when they have officially said that this is the Church of Jesus Christ. When I and Dennis also remembers that when we were missionaries, when we had the whole mission to get together periodically, where the mission president gave us all kinds of encouraging things when there were very few people in Finland that joined the Mormon Church, so they were very selective of that. But the mission president, I remember that clearly. He gave us an example. He says, when you're knocking at the people's doors, and you want to present them the gospel of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints, he said, if they ask, are you Christian? You said no. That was throughout. Dennis was in the mission for 2.5 years, and I was, of course, Finland was there, but that was always during our mission. If people ask, are you Christian? You say, no, we are Mormons. That was what we had to say. And the reason was, they said, Joseph Smith said that all Christian churches are abomination to God. We are not part of that. That was what our leader, the whole mission, said to us to say and do. And so that's what we did. We always said we are Mormons, we are not Christian missionaries. But now, if you talk to any Mormon, active or new Mormon or whatever, they are saying we are Christians. They use the name Christ, they use the name Jesus, but it's another Jesus. It's the Lucifer's brother, and that part I was planning on talking about that when the Adam and Eve come and in a temple ceremony come to view. And then Lucifer, Adam asks Lucifer, what is this apron that you have on? We all Temple Mormons were aproned that time. I had to do all the work, translation work inside the temple, and I had to attend many times, especially to the endowment whole ceremony, and including the creation part. It was Elohim, which is the head God, and then Jehovah and Michael that organized the world. They didn't create. The word creation is not used in the wording. Elohim, the head God, sends Jehovah and Michael to organize the world from the existing material. Mormon God never ordered creation or created by his word. He just had Michael and Jehovah organize the world. And then on the sixth day of creation, Michael, who has been a partner with Jehovah on organization of the world and universe, then Michael becomes Adam. So that's where the Adam God doctrine more than likely began. Was it because Michael was one of the organizers or creators of the world, and then after that, in Mormon temple ceremony, there is no Michael, there's Adam. And it says that, even in a wording that I had to translate, it says that Michael became Adam, and then let's see, that the one who we had in the scriptures learned as a Michael is actually becomes Adam. So that's where more than likely, actually I have read papers where Brigham Young said that he learned that Adam is God from Joseph Smith. And of course we can see, and there's a prayer in that ceremony elsewhere where the Adam prays to God, and Lucifer appears and says, the translated words in my English text is, "Oh God, hear the words of my mouth," is what when Adam prays, and Lucifer enters in and says, "I hear you. What is it that you want?" So, in other words, in a ceremony, and I think it's still, even if they've changed ceremony, I think it's still they'll say that it is Lucifer who answers, but they don't. There's something changed. I haven't dealt with that much, except I have read Sandra's book on changing the text, and the same text that was Joseph Smith gave in 1842 when he took the ceremony from the Masons and made it an endowment ceremony for Mormons. And there are some things. I've read that booklet, and it was very good, but I didn't have anything to do with those changes. The changes were actually made into the ceremony later. And by the way, I brought some of that. This friend of mine copied for us this booklet, what's going on in there. The temple ceremony as it was had been actually from 1842 when Joseph Smith became a Mason, and 6 weeks later introduced the ceremony as a revelation from God, that this whole temple ceremony was a revelation from God. And this is the same as what I translated. I didn't have a booklet. I had just pieces of it to translate it all together. But there's so much falsehood there. First of all, that Joseph Smith saying that he received that ceremony as a revelation from God. There were things in that there's no way that it was just for Masons. But I brought 6 copies of these, so any of you that want it, you can have it. I have it in the little briefcase here, and those who don't get it now, you can contact us, and you can come and get one. Other than that, other than the things that they removed from this, as mainly the penalties, what the penalty for revealing anything that happens in a temple. Those penalties have been removed from 1990 on. So those people that have gone to the temple first time, after that, they don't know the penalty. But penalties are recorded in this one. And this was done by Chuck Sackett, who was a convert to Mormonism and worked later in Los Angeles temple as a temple worker. And he, when he realized that he is part of the falsehood, he hid a recorder in his pockets. He was dressed like in a white suit, like a temple workers are, and he had put the tape recorder in his pocket, and he actually attended all, because he was a temple worker elsewhere too, so he attended all the sessions of the temple, whether it was baptism, in initiatory orders, or endowments or sealings. He recorded all of those, and then later he made it a booklet, and it was first time published in 1982. But of course, his recording was from before 1980 even. But it's the same. I could recognize the whole thing because I spent almost 4 months in a Salt Lake temple doing this, because if you do like a normal translation of the English text, this is not it. It really would, if you translated it like you translate books or other things, I wouldn't come up with this. So it's totally, and when you put it all together, it doesn't make any sense. That's why even the temple workers only get their part, or part of they get one ceremony where they had to be part of. They don't get the whole picture. And it was, and the temple president told me there were a couple of things that when I was translating the ceremonies, all these, he said that even he had never seen it written. One was the 5 points of fellowship through the veil. That temple president, temple president that was in 70s, he said, I have never seen it written, but I had to write it to you so that you can translate it. And there were a couple of other things too that he said they're not in the temple workers. They had to memorize the hierarchy in a temple, had to teach them some parts that were not written, so that they could do their part in a temple. But now then after that they had to put it in writing. And so there were a few other things that the temple president said, this has never been in writing before. So
after you left the Mormon church, how long was it before you became a Christian? And why did you become a Christian? Like, was it a few weeks or months or years after you left the Mormon church?
Well, at first we had no idea, no plan on preaching or teaching anti-Mormon anything. We just left, and the only thing that we then said that I have found through my own experience and going through all kinds of hierarchies, writings and things that are not published, but where I could see that this was not what the Mormon gospel was. And so, I knew that it wasn't true, but then I says, I'm totally through of spreading what I know to be lie to my country, because I was putting everything that I translated into my language, and so I didn't want to participate in any way to any part of Mormonism. And it was our very first Christian pastor. We were living in Vernal, Utah at that time. It was a Baptist pastor, Herb Stoneman. He was unusual pastor, even to the Baptist. He played guitar, which at that time no Baptist played guitar publicly, and so not that we knew. They didn't dance, they didn't play that kind of instrument or anything. Only organ or piano, that was their instrument in the meetings. And but anyway, that pastor, he had come to Vernal from Colorado, Grand Junction, Colorado. Yeah, he could come there as a pastor, and that was the first church that we had been just studying the Bible with Dr. Chuck Missler. We'd studied the Bible with him for over 2 years before we even. But then he mentioned that you actually, if you're a believer, you should attend meetings with other Christians.
How did you meet or hear of Chuck Missler?
Oh, it was we had a business, retail business in Vernal, and we had a lady that worked for us there, and we thought that she was a Mormon, and because she always talked about it, how she had been a release of the president, she had been this and that and everything, and one day I stopped by, and Dennis, of course, was always there because he ran that business, but she asked this Linda that was working for us in a store. She asked me, "What are you doing in the church now?" She had known that I had been in a stake relief society board. I had been teaching genealogy for years in a Mormon church there in Vernal, and so she knows. She said, because she asked, "What do you do in the church?" I said, "I don't go there." So she started asking questions, and then she said, "I've been studying the Gospel of John by Chuck Missler, and he is really interesting teacher. Would you like to listen to it? I can give you a tape of his." And I said, "Well, yeah, sure." But actually, at that time, I wasn't even sure that I wanted anything. I was kind of like a no church. I was churchless person for a while, and then I started studying. She brought me that tape, Gospel of John, and boy, did he wake me up. I realized, there is God, and there is Jesus, and there is truth. But of course, I had only by that time had, his tapes were all 90-minute tapes. And I had only listened to the first one. But even from that, I knew there was truth. So then I called Linda and said, can you give me more? Because it ended at the Gospel of John, chapter 3. And I said, how, do you have more? And she said, no, I only had that. But there was an address in that tape where you can get more, and it was Westminster, Calvary Church, and you can order it, and they can send you, and so I immediately, that was before computers. BC. It was and so I wrote to that address that was on that tape, and I said that I have listened to the first one, but I would like to get more, and very fast considering that it had to go by mail to California, and then they sent me a package, and there were 22 90-minute tapes, and I had asked, send me what they cost, and I will quickly send you the money. And there was just a note: ask and you shall receive. There was no charge. And so I got those 22, and that's when I finally got Dennis to listen to. Up to that point, he was still active in the church, didn't want to answer any things that I wanted to ask him, he didn't want to talk. and he just said he had a testimony that the church, Mormon church, was true. So that's all he needed to know. So it took a while to get him to, I said, would you just listen to just the one tape? I had now 22. And he, first he said, no, I'm not interested. But then finally I said, well, if you don't want to listen to more after that first one, then that's your decision. But I would like you to hear that. And so he listened to that 90-minute tape, and he said, let's listen to the next one. and the next one, he then finally said, I'm ready to leave the church with you, because I had told him that I'm going to leave, but I want to leave together. And so he said, yes, but I'm not going to join any church. That was the first thing he says. I'm not going to join any church. And I said, you don't have to. It's not the gospel requirement that you are a member of some church. You're a member of the Christ the church, spiritual entity, and as a church is all people. So anyway, there's so many things that we went through, and then it was 1983. I had been studying about the Misslers with about 2 years, a little over 2 years alone. Well, and I took my two younger girls. That one was, let's see, what was Elena was younger. She was 12, and Mina was 14 when I involved those girls to the studies with me, and they were really excited, and they really liked it, and they became born again at the same time when Dennis became born again, and so we're all Christ-filled people, and so it's just a wonderful thing. And I look at my back, everything from how I joined the Mormon Church. It was the work for the dead that got me in. And even though I know that the work for the dead doesn't do any good for the dead, but it did convert me out of Mormonism into biblical Christianity. And we still are not literally members of any Christian church, but we're members of all Christians that are born again and belong to Christ. So our names are not recorded as a member of this and that. It was then when I first joined the Baptist church in Vernal, and Dennis and the girls also. But after we moved from there, we haven't joined any church, but we belong to Christ totally. So I think I've taken somebody else's time. there would be a lot to say. But you know, if Eric wants me to come in the fall to have a special maybe question answer session or something, you certainly come in. I do have. Now I'm not under the oath of keeping those secrets that I was under when I was a Mormon. I am totally free to say whatever the Holy Spirit gives me to say. So it's all free.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rauni. Would you all come back if she came back?
Yes.
All right, well, we will have to have her back on the phone. Thank you. That was tremendous for you to be able to speak as well as you did. I wasn't sure what we were going to get. You did very
Well,
well.
yeah, and I was.
expecting more
I
positive
actually
things.
had.
You really did.
I had actually written myself what I was going to say, but I thought I have a hard time reading right now. You know, so I thought, well, I'm going to say what I can remember, and I do still have a problem. But it, you know, when you look at what, you know, it happened 6 weeks ago that I had that stroke. It's some kind of a blood clot went for my, either from my artery or for my heart to my brain, and it made a blockage there. And I you know, and then I didn't even at first want to go to a doctor, because I thought, well, God is my doctor. You know, He can heal me. If He wants to heal me, He will. And so it was over a week after that. It was Dennis had an appointment with his cardiologist, because he has had in the past 2 heart attacks. So he has to have a regular appointments with cardiology, and he's under blood pressure medication, 4 actually different blood pressure medications. So he, what I was going to say, now I lost it. Anyway,
You had the stroke and I made the appointment to keep
yeah,
you
right.
the
He had an appointment with Dr. Nielsen, who's a cardiologist, works with the St. Mark's Hospital Heart Center, and Dennis had an appointment that day, and well, I had to wear a monitor for about a week, you know, that was to my chest. There's that's the same cardiologist I have. He wanted to see what was going on in my heart, and so I had that monitor in my heart. I mean, over my heart, somewhere right there, and it was sent to Arizona, that has some kind of a special place where they record every single thing that is shows in that, all my heart movements, everything, heart rate and whatever. It records everything. So that recording, the result or the results of that recording was sent to this cardiologist. It's the same cardiologist Dennis has, Dr. Nielsen, and Dennis went to his appointment, and this doctor said that he has received now the results of the test, that week-long test, and so that Dennis's appointment ended up being my appointment via him. So the doctor went with Dennis, went through the whole. There were 10. You know, I have that same report then given to me too. But there were 10 points there that monitor showed was wrong with my heart. But there were 4 that were needed to be treated. And I had already been in a mild heart medication because I've had other medical problems that created my heart to beat fast or skip beats or whatever. So now this doctor, Dennis, went through every point, and he said that now I have to stop taking what I'm taking now, the medicine I'm taking now, and he's going to prescribe the medicine that takes care of all those 4 problems that I have in my heart. And so he just said, don't take the old medicine, but you have to be, I think it was 3 days without that to wean yourself from the old medicine, and then you're going to start taking this new one. Well, I was happy to hear that, and I quit taking the other, and I was very uncomfortable for a couple of days with no medicine at all for my heart. And but then Dennis went and got the pharmacy, got the new prescription, and the other medicine that I had was only 10 milligram tablets. This new one was 50 milligram, and, even in the first day, I didn't feel good. And the second day, I was really feeling bad. So Dennis, actually, since he had become a friend of for both of us, so he called the doctor and told that how I was reacting to that. The doctor said, then stop it. Don't take it. Go back to the old, but increase the doses. Because there was a 10 milligram tablets that I was taking, says take 20 milligram. And I have, that was a week ago, wasn't it? A week ago when I stopped that new medicine that I only took less than 2 days. That made me really sick. And so now I have been taking this old medicine, but stronger, and I feel a lot better. I don't think I could have talked a week ago. Wow. Even though Dennis has said she might not be here. Because I was, I kind of am not myself yet, but I think I will be, and God is my healer, and I'm here.
I think you enlivened as you talked.
Yeah, see, it's the Lord.
You know what this means, Rauni?
What?
The Lord's not finished with you yet. You
Well,
got more work to do here. You can't go into heavenly glory until you finish with
yeah,
you.
I was actually thinking that would be wonderful.
We need more work from you here. You got more to do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's give Rauni a hand again. Thank you.